sat on his porch, watching the twin moons of New Terra rise over the rolling hills. His cybernetic leg ached tonight, a reminder of the Battle of Station where he'd lost both his limb and his taste for war. 20 years of military service had ended with a medal, a pension, and a quiet farm on the outer rim where humans were still rare enough to be left alone. The evening was peaceful until the sky lit up with the blue glow of a landing craft. Reached for the pulse rifle he kept by his chair, old habits dying hard. The craft was sleek, alien in design, bearing the royal markings of the Empire. His blood ran cold. They had been humanity's fiercest enemies during the war, their warrior culture clashing violently with human expansion. The ship landed in his wheat field, crushing several rows of crops. Cursed under his breath as a ramp lowered and figures emerged. The lead figure was unmistakably 7 feet tall, covered in bronze scales, with 4 arms and predatory yellow eyes. What caught off guard was the ornate armor and the crown-like neural implant that marked this alien as royalty. Human, the alien spoke in accented but clear English, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "I am king of the 5th Fleet. I come bearing a gift." Kept his rifle ready but lowered. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, using the formal address he'd learned during diplomatic briefings. "I'm retired if this is about the war." "The war is long over, soldier," interrupted, gesturing with one of his 4 hands. 2 of his guards approached carrying what looked like a massive cage covered in a dark cloth. "This concerns honor and debt." The cage was set down 20 feet from the porch. Whatever was inside was big and restless, occasionally bumping against the bars. Could hear low growling that made his spine tingle with primal fear. "During the Battle of Seven," continued, "my youngest son was trapped in a burning wreck. Human forces had orders to take no prisoners, yet you personally extracted him from certain death. You could have left him to die, claimed ignorance. Instead, you risked your own life to save an enemy." Remembered that day? The cruiser had been split open like a tin can, atmosphere venting, fires raging in the oxygen-rich sections. He'd heard someone screaming inside and couldn't just walk away, even if it was an alien. The young had been pinned under debris, his leg nearly severed. Had used his own emergency medical supplies to stabilize the kid before dragging him to safety. "I did what anyone would do," said simply. His laugh was harsh like grinding metal. "No, human, what you did was show honor to an enemy who had shown you none. My son lived because of your actions. He grew to become a great warrior, married well, fathered cubs of his own. When he died last year in battle against the rebels, his final words were about the human who saved him." The alien king stepped closer to the cage. "In culture, a life debt can only be repaid with something of equal value. I offer you this." He pulled away the cloth, revealing the most magnificent and terrifying creature had ever seen. It looked like a wolf, but scaled up to the size of a horse, with midnight black fur that seemed to absorb light. Its eyes were an unsettling shade of violet, filled with an intelligence that seemed almost human. When it looked at, he felt like he was being evaluated rather than simply observed. Announced with obvious pride. "From the royal bloodline bred for war and companionship, this particular specimen is unique." "I can't accept this," said immediately. "I've heard about these creatures. They're sacred to your people, and frankly, they're dangerous as hell." The tilted its massive head and, to shock, spoke in clear English with a distinctly feminine voice. "Dangerous. That depends entirely on your definition, human." Nearly dropped his rifle. In all his years fighting alongside and against various alien species, he'd never encountered a non-sentient creature capable of human speech. His expression was unreadable. "As I said, this one is unique. Her name is. She was exposed to experimental neural enhancement during a failed laboratory raid 3 years ago. The process gave her human-level intelligence and the ability to understand and speak multiple languages." His violet eyes never left as she continued. "The enhancement also made me something of a pariah among my own kind. They see me as an abomination, neither fully animal nor fully sentient. I have been difficult to manage." "She has killed 3 handlers," added matter-of-factly. "Not out of malice, but they could not understand that she is no longer simply an animal to be commanded. She requires a partner, not a master, someone who understands war and honor." Studied the creature. Even caged, she radiated a deadly grace that reminded him of the elite soldiers he'd served with. There was pain in those violet eyes, the kind that came from being caught between worlds. "Why would you think I'm the right person for this?" asked. Because, answered instead of the king, you are the human who saved a life when it would have been easier to take one. The enhancement allows me to sense things about people. You carry the weight of command, the burden of difficult choices. You understand what it means to be caught between duty and conscience. Nodded approvingly. She chose you, actually. When I described my intention to repay the debt to my son's savior, she requested to be the gift. In our culture, a choice is sacred. To refuse would be problematic. The implications hung in the air. Refusing a gift from a king, especially one tied to honor debt, could be seen as a grave insult. In the delicate peace between humans, and that kind of diplomatic incident could restart conflicts that had cost millions of lives. Looked at his quiet farm, then at the magnificent, dangerous creature watching him with unsettling intelligence. If I accept her, what exactly does that mean? It means, said, rising to her full impressive height within the cage, that we become bonded partners. In the old tradition, a warrior and their share a mental link. With my enhancement, that bond would be even stronger. We would be able to communicate telepathically, share emotions, coordinate in combat as if we were one mind in two bodies. Combat raised an eyebrow. I'm retired. His expression grew serious. The galaxy is not as peaceful as it appears human. The syndicate grows bolder. Pirate clans raid the outer rim with increasing frequency. And there are whispers of something else, something moving in the dark spaces between stars. A warrior's retirement is often temporary. Felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. Are you saying trouble is coming? I am saying that trouble never truly leaves, the king replied. It simply waits for the right moment to return. When it does, warriors like you will be needed again, could be invaluable in such times. The padded closer to the bars nearest. I will not lie to you, human. I am dangerous. My combat training is extensive, my intelligence is beyond that of your species, and my loyalty, once given, is absolute. But I am also alone. My own kind fear me, and they see me as a useful tool rather than a living being. You could offer me something I have never had, a true partnership. Found himself drawn into those violet eyes. There was loneliness there, and a fierce pride that reminded him of his own feelings after the war ended. They were both soldiers without a war, caught between their old lives and an uncertain future. The bonding process, he asked, is it reversible? No, said simply. Once linked, we remain connected until one of us dies. You would feel my emotions, my thoughts, if I choose to share them. I would sense your intentions, your needs. In battle, we would move as one. In peace, we would be companions. Stepped forward. I must have an answer, human. My ships depart at dawn. Looked at his peaceful farm, his quiet retirement, the life he'd built away from violence and conflict. Then he looked at, trapped in her cage, caught between worlds just as he was caught between his past as a soldier and his attempt at a peaceful future. If I refuse, what happens to her? The king's silence was answer enough. Sighed and set down his rifle, opened the cage. The guards looked to their king, who nodded slowly. Are you certain, human? Once released, if she chooses to bond with you, there is no going back. I'm certain. The guards activated a control device, and the cage door swung open. Stepped out slowly, her massive form moving with liquid grace. She was even larger outside the confines of the cage, her shoulder coming up to his chest. Up close, he could see the intelligence burning in her violet eyes, the subtle signs of the neural enhancement's thin silver lines that traced along her skull like circuitry. She approached him carefully, stopping just out of arm's reach. Are you ready? Ready for what? To find out if we are compatible. The bonding begins with touch, but it only completes if our minds are truly in harmony. If we are not compatible, the process will simply fail. If we are, she trailed off, her expression unreadable. If we are, then you will understand what it means to have as a true partner. Reached out his hand, palm up. Studied it for a long moment, then gently pressed her massive snout against his palm. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Images flooded his mind, memories of life, her pack hunting in alien forests, her capture and the horrifying experiments that changed her, the loneliness and confusion as she became something her own kind couldn't understand. But underneath it all was strength, loyalty, and a fierce desire to find her place in the universe. He felt her consciousness brush against his, testing, exploring, seeking compatibility. In return, she experienced his memories, battles fought across the galaxy, the weight of command, the guilt over orders that had cost lives, the loneliness of retirement, the yearning for purpose. The mental connection deepened, and felt something shift in his mind, like a door opening to reveal a room he'd never known was there. Suddenly, he could sense emotions as clearly as his own: her cautious hope, her fear of rejection, her growing sense of rightness about this pairing. "Yes," she whispered, and he heard it both with his ears and in his mind. "We are compatible, very compatible." The bond settled into place like a missing piece of himself clicking into position. He could feel his presence in his mind, warm and powerful, but not overwhelming. She had made space for herself without pushing out his own thoughts and personality. Watch the process with obvious satisfaction. It is done. She has accepted you as her bonded partner. In law, you are now responsible for each other's honor and well-being. Looked down at, still amazed at the mental link between them. What does that mean practically? "It means," said her mental voice amused, "that we are partners in the truest sense. Where you go, I go. Your enemies are my enemies, your goals are my goals, and vice versa. I told you I'm retired." Both and exchanged what might have been meaningful looks. "The galaxy has a way of pulling great warriors back into service," the king said, "perhaps sooner than you think." As if summoned by his words, a new ship appeared in the evening sky, this one human in design, but marked with the insignia of the Galactic Council. It landed next to the craft, and a woman in council uniform emerged. She was middle-aged, carrying herself with the authority of someone high in the government hierarchy. "Colonel," she called out as she approached, "I'm Director Sarah from Council Intelligence. I apologize for the intrusion, but we have a situation that requires your particular expertise." Felt some amusement through their bond. "It seems your retirement is about to become complicated, partner." Director stopped when she saw her hand instinctively moving toward her sidearm. Is that a..." "My bonded partner," said, surprised at how natural the words felt. "Meet Director, this is." The inclined her massive head politely. "Director, I assume your arrival is not a coincidence." His eyes widened at hearing the speak. No, it's not. Colonel, we need you for a mission. Something has been attacking Council ships in the Vega sector. The attacks are too coordinated for pirates, too brutal for we need someone with your experience to investigate." Felt's interest spiked through their bond, along with something that might have been excitement. Through their link, he sensed that she was tired of the peaceful but purposeless life she'd been living. The prospect of action, of having a mission, appealed to her warrior nature. "I'm retired," said, but even as he spoke the words, he felt the familiar pull of duty. "The ships aren't just being destroyed," continued. "They're being taken apart piece by piece like something is studying them, and the crew, what's left of them, shows signs of experimentation." Stepped forward. "This is why I chose to deliver my gift tonight. My intelligence networks have detected similar attacks on vessels. Whatever is responsible for this is targeting multiple species." "You knew about this?" demanded. "I suspected. The pattern of attacks, the timing of their escalation. It suggests coordination by an intelligence that understands both human and technology. Someone or something is preparing for war." Felt's thoughts align with his own growing concern. Through their bond, he sensed her analysis of the situation, the strategic implications, the need for investigation, the probability that this was just the beginning of something larger. "What do you think?" he asked her mentally. "I think," she replied in his mind, "that our quiet retirement was never going to last, and I think that together we might be able to find answers that neither humans nor could find alone." Director watched this silent exchange with growing impatience. "Colonel, I know you're retired, but you're the only human who's worked successfully with alien species in both combat and diplomatic situations. And now you have a partner who understands tactics better than any human alive." Looked at his peaceful farm, his quiet life, then at whose violet eyes reflected both understanding and anticipation. Through their bond, he felt her readiness for action, her desire to finally put her enhanced abilities to use for something meaningful. "If I agree to this," he said slowly, "it's not as a colonel returning to service. I'm a civilian consultant and my partner comes with me." "Of course," said quickly, "the council would welcome assistance." Smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "I believe my debt has been repaid most appropriately. You now have what you need to face whatever threat emerges from the darkness. use her wisely. As the alien king and his guards returned to their ship, felt the weight of new responsibility settling on his shoulders. But for the first time since his retirement began, he also felt purpose returning to his life. "Are you ready for this?" he asked as the ship lifted off into the night. Her mental response was filled with fierce joy. "I have been ready my entire life. The question is, are you ready to discover what we can accomplish together?" Looking up at the stars where unknown threats waited, realized his quiet retirement was officially over. But with presence steady and strong in his mind, he found he wasn't afraid of whatever came next. 3 days later, and stood on the bridge of the Council's ship Endurance, watching the twisted wreckage of what had once been the cargo vessel Meridian drift silently through space. The attack had happened only 6 hours ago, according to the distress beacon, but whatever had done this was long gone. Captain, a veteran officer with graying temples, gestured toward the main. "This is the 3rd ship this month in this sector. Same pattern, complete crew loss, cargo untouched, but the ships themselves are dissected." Studied the wreckage through the tactical display. The Meridian had been systematically taken apart, its hull plates removed with surgical precision. Critical systems had been extracted intact, while others were left to float in organized debris fields. Their learning, observed through their mental link. Each attack is more precise than the last. "Learning what?" asked aloud, earning curious looks from the bridge crew who still weren't used to him having conversations with his partner. "Ship construction, defensive systems, crew behavior patterns," replied, padding closer to the tactical console. Her enhanced intelligence allowed her to analyze data streams directly. "Look at the extraction points. They targeted the reactor housing first, then the navigation system, then life support. That's not random salvage, that's systematic study." Director joined them on the bridge, carrying a data pad with the preliminary investigation reports. "The few survivors we've found from previous attacks all report the same thing before they stopped being coherent. Creatures they describe as shadow hunters that seem to phase in and out of reality." Felt a chill run down his spine. During the war, there had been rumors of experimental weapons, things that both humans and aliens had been working on but never deployed. Phasing technology had been one of them, the ability to exist partially outside normal spacetime. "Have you found any pattern to the attacks?" asked, her violet eyes scanning multiple data streams simultaneously. "Location, timing, ship types." Captain pulled up a star chart. "They seem to be working their way toward the core systems, but not directly. They hit supply routes, research vessels, and—" he hesitated. "And what?" prompted. "Ships carrying experimental technology. 3 of the attacked vessels were transporting classified research materials." Through their bond, Felt's alarm spike. "What kind of research materials?" His expression grew grim. "Advanced AI components, quantum phase generators, and biological enhancement systems. Whoever is doing this isn't just studying our ships, they're collecting specific technologies." "Technologies that could be used to create enhanced soldiers," said quietly, "or enhanced something else." Felt the pieces clicking together in his mind. They're building something. These aren't random attacks, they're shopping expeditions. "But who are they?" asked. "We've never detected a ship large enough to house the equipment needed for these surgical strikes, and the phase signatures don't match any known technology." Moved to the science station, her enhanced mind interfacing directly with the ship's sensors. "Permission to conduct a detailed scan of the wreckage, Captain." "Granted, but our science teams have already." "With respect, Captain," interrupted, "I can process data streams at a rate your teams cannot match, and my neural enhancements were based on similar technology to what's been stolen. I might recognize things they would miss." For the next hour, remained motionless at the science console, her consciousness deep in the ship's sensor network. Could feel her mind working through their bond, the incredible speed of her enhanced cognition, analyzing thousands of data points simultaneously. Finally, she stirred. "I found something. There are trace residues in the wreckage that match the neural enhancement compounds used on me." The bridge fell silent. "That's impossible," said. "That research was classified beyond top secret. Only a handful of people knew it existed." "Then either someone with that clearance is involved," said grimly, "or whoever is doing this has access to research facilities." His expression was troubled. "There's more. The extraction patterns match surgical techniques used in neural enhancement procedures. Whoever did this understands biological systems as well as mechanical ones. A new alarm sounded on the bridge. Lieutenant at the communications station looked up with concern. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal. The research vessel Newton's Pride, approximately 2 light hours from our position." "How long ago was the signal sent?" asked. 17 minutes ago, sir, but—" the lieutenant's face went pale. "The signal just cut off." Felt's predatory instincts surged through their bond. "We need to get there now. If the attackers are still in the area, this might be our only chance to actually see them." "Set course for the Newton's Pride, maximum warp," ordered. "All hands to battle stations." As the Endurance jumped to warp and prepared for what might be their first real encounter with the mysterious attackers, through their bond, he could feel her excitement mixed with professional concern. She was finally getting the chance to use her combat training for something meaningful. "What was the Newton's Pride carrying?" asked. "Advanced cybernetic research, neural interface prototypes that would allow direct human-computer integration." The expression darkened. "The kind of technology that could create super soldiers if combined with biological enhancements." "Or super somethings," added ominously. "If they're collecting both mechanical and biological enhancement technologies, they might not be planning to enhance existing species." The implications of that statement hit everyone on the bridge at the same time. 2 hours later, they dropped out of warp near the Newton's Pride's last known coordinates. The research vessel hung motionless in space, its hull intact but all external lights dark. No life signs registered on their sensors. "Life support is offline," reported the science officer, "but the ship's hull is intact. Whatever happened here just ended." "Boarding party," ordered. "Full combat gear." Stood, feeling rise beside him. "We're going over." "Colonel, you're a consultant, not—" "Captain," interrupted, "can sense things your equipment can't. And if these attackers are using phase technology, we need someone who might be able to track them." Nodded reluctantly. "Take a full security team." 20 minutes later, and stepped aboard the Newton's Pride through the airlock. The ship was dark except for emergency lighting, and an eerie silence filled the corridors. Their mental link allowed them to coordinate perfectly covering angles while used her enhanced senses to detect threats he couldn't perceive. "No bodies," observed Sergeant Martinez, the security team leader, "but signs of struggle." Sniffed the air, her enhanced olfactory systems detecting traces that human senses couldn't process. Something was here recently, something that doesn't belong to this reality. They made their way to the ship's research labs, following the trail of disrupted equipment. In the main laboratory, they found what they were looking for, and what they found changed everything. The research equipment had been disassembled with the same surgical precision they'd seen before, but this time, the attackers had left something behind. In the center of the lab floor was a device none of them recognized, a crystalline structure that pulsed with an inner light, surrounded by technology that seemed to shift and phase in and out of visibility. "Don't approach it," warned, her mental voice sharp with alarm. "That's not from any species we know." Studied the device from a safe distance. "It's beautiful," he admitted, "but wrong somehow." "It's a beacon," realized, her enhanced mind analyzing the energy patterns. "They left it here deliberately. It's calling to something." As if summoned by her words, reality around the device began to warp. The air shimmered like heat waves, and shadows that seemed too deep and dark began to coalesce into solid forms. The shadow hunters had arrived. Got his first clear look at the attackers, and immediately understood why the survivors had trouble describing them. They seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially elsewhere, their forms shifting between solid and translucent. They were roughly humanoid but elongated, with limbs that moved in ways that anatomy. Their faces, when visible, were a nightmare fusion of organic and mechanical components. "They're enhanced," breathed through their bond. "Not naturally evolved. Someone took existing beings and modified them with the stolen technology." The lead shadow hunter turned toward them and saw intelligence in its shifting features. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once, as if reality itself was talking. "The bonded pair, we have been watching you." "What do you want?" demanded, his weapon trained on the creature even though he doubted conventional weapons would be effective. Evolution, transcendence, the merger of all viable technologies into perfect forms. The creature gestured toward with one elongated arm. You carry the enhancements we require. Submit to integration and your suffering will be brief. Growl filled the air and felt her combat instincts surge through their bond. We are not interested in your integration. Choice is irrelevant, you will be processed. The shadow hunters moved with impossible speed, phasing in and out of reality to avoid weapons fire, but had advantages they didn't expect. Their mental bond allowed them to coordinate without communication, moving as if they were one mind in two bodies, and enhanced reflexes let her track the creatures even when they partially phased out of reality. The battle was unlike anything had experienced during the war. Traditional tactics were useless against enemies that could step sideways out of reality, but neural enhancements let her predict their movements. Through their bond, she guided his actions while her own combat training proved devastatingly effective. The beacon, she transmitted to him during a brief lull. Destroy it and they'll lose their anchor to this reality. Fought his way toward the crystalline device while kept the shadow hunters occupied. Her size and enhanced strength made her a formidable opponent, even for creatures that could phase through solid matter. When one of them tried to grab her with elongated claws, she clamped her jaws around its arm and refused to let go, even as it tried to phase away. Reached the beacon and attached an explosive charge. Everyone out now. The security team retreated toward the airlock while and covered their withdrawal. The shadow hunters seemed to realize what he was planning and pressed their attack with desperate fury. The charge is set, called out. 30 seconds. His mental voice was strained. I can't disengage. One of them has some kind of energy field around me. Turned to see trapped in a shimmering cage of force while a shadow hunter approached with what looked like a neural interface device. They intended to enhance her further, to integrate her into whatever they were becoming. Without hesitation, charged back into the lab. The shadow hunter turned toward him, but used the distraction to break free of the energy field through sheer brute force. Together, they fought their way back toward the exit as the countdown continued. 10 seconds announced. They reached the airlock just as the explosive charge detonated. The beacon shattered in a burst of crystalline fragments, and the shadow hunters let out a collective shriek that seemed to come from outside normal reality. One by one, they faded away, their anchor to this dimension severed. Back aboard the Endurance and debriefed with the senior staff. The encounter had raised more questions than it answered. They knew about our bond, observed. They were specifically targeting enhanced beings like me. And they're clearly not working alone, added. Someone or something is coordinating these attacks, collecting specific technologies. Director reviewed the tactical data from the encounter. The shadow hunters themselves appear to be enhanced versions of some base species. The question is, enhanced by whom? And for what purpose? Captain added grimly. Through their bond, felt unease. Something about the encounter was bothering her, something beyond the obvious threat. What is it? He asked her mentally. The enhancement patterns in those creatures, she replied. They're familiar, the neural interface points, the biomechanical integration. I've seen similar work before. Where? In the memories of my own enhancement process. Whoever created those shadow hunters used techniques very similar to what was done to me. The implications hit like a physical blow. You think whoever enhanced you is involved in this? I think, said grimly, that my creation was not a failed experiment, it was a prototype. As the Endurance set course for the nearest council facility, realized their investigation had taken a deeply personal turn. The attacks weren't random and wasn't just an enhanced. She was apparently the template for something much larger and more dangerous. Through their bond, he felt her determination mixed with anger. Someone had used her as a test subject for weapons that were now threatening the entire galaxy. And together, they were going to find out who and stop them. But first, they needed to understand exactly what had been enhanced to become, and had a growing suspicion that the answer to that question would change everything they thought they knew about the war that had ended 20 years ago. The classified research station, Prometheus, hung in the shadow of a dead moon, its location known only to the highest levels of council intelligence. Director had arranged clearance for and to access the facility's archives, hoping to find answers about its original enhancement process and its connection to the Shadow Hunters. Doctor, the station's chief researcher, greeted them at the docking bay with obvious nervousness. She was a small woman with intense dark eyes, and noticed how she kept stealing glances at with a mixture of scientific fascination and barely concealed fear. "I have to admit, I never expected to see her again," Doctor said as she led them through sterile corridors. "When the enhancement project was terminated, we assumed all test subjects had been eliminated." Felt's anger spiked through their bond. Eliminated. The official report stated that the neural enhancement process was too unstable for practical application, Doctor explained, seeming to shrink under his violet glare. All research materials were supposed to be destroyed. "But they weren't," said, her voice carrying a dangerous edge. "Someone continued the work." Doctor stopped at a security checkpoint, submitting to multiple bioscans before the doors opened to reveal a vast archive chamber. Holographic displays showed research data spanning decades, most of it sealed under classification levels had never seen. The Prometheus project was a joint human research initiative, Doctor began, activating a display that showed its original enhancement procedures. The goal was to create enhanced soldiers capable of fighting threats that conventional forces couldn't handle. Studied the technical readouts, many of which were beyond his understanding. But the images were clear enough surgical procedures that had transformed from a normal into something far more complex. "What kind of threats?" he asked. Doctor hesitated, then activated another display. This one showed star charts marked with strange symbols and energy readings that didn't correspond to any known phenomena. During the later years of the war, our deep space sensors detected anomalies in the void between galaxies, structures that shouldn't exist, energy patterns that known physics. The project was designed to create enhanced beings capable of operating in environments where normal soldiers would be helpless. Through their bond, Felt's growing unease. Her enhanced memory was processing the technical data faster than any human could, and what she was discovering disturbed her. "These enhancement techniques," she said slowly, "they're designed to allow beings to exist partially outside normal reality, to phase between dimensions." "Exactly like the Shadow Hunters," realized. Doctor nodded grimly. "The enhancement process creates a hybrid existence, part physical, part extra-dimensional. It was supposed to allow enhanced soldiers to fight enemies that used similar technology." "But the project was terminated," said. "So who continued the research?" Before Doctor could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Emergency lighting bathed the archive in red, and automated voices announced, "Dimensional breach detected. All personnel to emergency stations." And exchanged grim looks. "They found us." "That's impossible," Doctor protested. "This facility is completely hidden, protected by—" Her words were cut off as reality began to warp in the center of the archive chamber. The familiar shimmer of phasing technology filled the air, and shadow hunters began materializing around them. But these were different from the ones they'd encountered before. Larger, more sophisticated, with enhancement patterns that now recognized from its own neural modifications. "Second generation," observed through their bond. "They've been refining the process." The lead shadow hunter was massive, nearly twice the size of the others, with biomechanical enhancements that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. When it spoke, its voice carried authority that suggested high intelligence and tactical experience. "Doctor, you have been located in violation of containment protocols. Surrender research materials for integration." "Containment protocols?" demanded. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" The creature turned its shifting gaze toward him. Doctor was part of the original research team. When the project was officially terminated, she was relocated here to prevent interference with continued development. Doctor backed away in horror. "That's not possible. The project was shut down by Joint Command. All research was classified and sealed." "Incorrect. The project was transferred to extra-dimensional oversight. Your governments believed they had terminated research that was no longer under their control." Through their bond, Felt's enhanced mind working through the implications. "They never stopped the research," she realized. "Someone moved it outside normal space, beyond government oversight." "But who?" asked. The shadow hunter's form, revealing features that were disturbingly familiar. Beneath the biomechanical enhancements, could see traces of what had once been a face. I am, formerly Prince of the Fifth Fleet. I volunteered for enhancement when it became clear that conventional forces would be insufficient to protect our peoples from the true threat. His blood ran cold. This was King's son, the one he had saved during the war, the one whose life debt had brought to him. You died fighting the rebels, said. Your father told me. My biological death was necessary to complete the enhancement process. I now exist in a state beyond conventional life and death, leading the enhanced forces that will defend reality itself. Doctor stared at the transformed prince in horror. The enhancement process wasn't supposed to require death. That was never part of the protocol. The original protocols were insufficient, replied. True enhancement requires abandonment of single-dimensional existence. We have become something greater than our original forms. Felt's realization hit him like a physical blow through their bond. The attack patterns, the surgical precision, the collection of specific technologies, they're not planning an invasion. They're planning a conversion. Correct, confirmed. All suitable species will be enhanced. Those who resist will be processed. Those who cooperate will retain individual consciousness within the collective. Collective, asked, though he was beginning to understand. The enhanced exist as both individuals and part of a greater whole. We share consciousness, coordinate perfectly, exist beyond the limitations of single-dimensional space. We are what your species and ours can become. Doctor activated an emergency protocol, sealing the archive chamber. Enhanced security measures engaged, dimensional anchors active. The shadow hunters immediately began trying to phase out, but something was preventing their dimensional shift. Its enhanced senses detected the energy field that was holding them in normal space. Dimensional anchors, she explained to through their bond. They prevent phase shifting within the field, but the field won't hold them long. Realized they had minutes at most before the shadow hunters broke free. Doctor, is there anything here that can stop them permanently? The original research included countermeasures, she said, frantically accessing archived files. But they were theoretical, never tested. What kind of countermeasures? A dimensional resonance weapon. It would force enhanced beings back into single-dimensional existence permanently. Where is it? The prototype is here in the secure lab, but it was never completed, and using it would be. Would be what? Demanded. Doctor looked at with obvious anguish. It would affect any enhanced being in the area, including her. Through their bond, Felt's grim acceptance. It would strip away my enhancements, return me to what I was before. You could die, protested. The enhancements are integrated into your neural system. Removing them could cause complete system failure. And if we don't stop them, they'll convert or eliminate every non-enhanced being in the galaxy. His voice cut through their conversation. The dimensional anchor field is weakening. Surrender now and your integration will be prioritized. Resist further and you will be processed like the others. Looked at, feeling her resolve through their bond. She had made her choice, and he knew she was right. The threat was too great to consider personal cost. Where's the lab? He asked Doctor. They fought their way through corridors filled with shadow hunters, and moving in perfect coordination despite the dimensional anchor field that was making his enhanced abilities unstable. Their bond allowed them to function as one tactical unit, but could feel the strain the anchor field was putting on her hybrid existence. The secure lab was a cathedral-sized chamber containing a device that looked like a massive tuning fork made of crystalline material. Doctor began activating startup sequences and held the entrance against increasingly desperate attacks from the shadow hunters. The device needs time to charge, Doctor called out. At least 10 minutes. We don't have 10 minutes, replied, seeing shadow hunters beginning to phase through the weakening anchor field. Made her decision without consulting him. Through their bond, he felt her sudden surge of determination mixed with what felt like goodbye. No. But she was already moving, leaving his side to position herself at the center of the resonance device. Her enhanced neural systems interfaced directly with the weapon's control systems, using her hybrid existence to the charging process. The bond between us is the key, she explained through their mental link, her voice growing fainter as the weapon drew power from her enhanced neural matrix. Our connection bridges the gap between normal and extra-dimensional existence. The device can use that bridge to complete its calibration. Felt their bond begin to weaken as fed more of her enhanced consciousness into the weapon. She was sacrificing her very existence to power the device that would save the galaxy from forced conversion. And his enhanced forces burst into the lab just as the resonance weapon reached full power. The transformed prince realized what was happening and tried to reach, but it was too late. The weapon discharged with a pulse of energy that seemed to come from outside normal reality. Every enhanced being in the facility screamed in unison as they were forced back into single-dimensional existence. Collapsed, his biomechanical enhancements failing as his consciousness was stripped of its extra-dimensional components. Fell silent, reached her side as the weapon powered down. She was still breathing, but barely. The neural enhancement patterns visible beneath her fur were fading, her violet eyes returning to normal animal intelligence. He whispered, knowing even as he spoke that their mental link was gone. She looked up at him with eyes that still held intelligence, but it was fading fast. When she spoke, it was with great effort, her enhanced ability to communicate already slipping away. The bond still there, just different. Her eyes closed, but her breathing remained steady. Doctor ran medical scans, her expression grim but not hopeless. She's alive, but the enhancements are completely gone. She's reverting to baseline physiology and neurology. Knelt beside his partner, stroking her now ordinary fur. Through the fading echo of their bond, he could still sense her presence weaker now, more animal than before, but still fundamentally. Stirred nearby, his enhancements gone, leaving him in his original form but dying from the shock of dimensional reversion. Went to him, honoring their shared history despite what the prince had become. The enhancement network, whispered weakly. Others across the galaxy, they'll continue without us. How many others? Demanded. Dozens of facilities, thousands of enhanced beings. The conversion will continue. Where, how do we stop them? But was already gone, his body unable to survive the forced return to single-dimensional existence. Doctor accessed her research archives, searching for information about other facilities. If Prince was telling the truth about the scope of the enhancement network, this was just one node. The weapon we used would only affect enhanced beings within a limited range. So we need to find the other facilities and repeat the process, said grimly. That could take years, and each facility would be defended by enhanced beings who now know what we're capable of. Looked down at, who was sleeping peacefully, her enhanced consciousness gone but her essential self apparently intact. Making his decision, he stood and faced Doctor. Then we'd better get started. Doctor, I need you to analyze the weapon's resonance patterns. Find a way to create portable versions that can be deployed at each facility. That will require extensive research and testing, and someone would need to carry them into incredibly dangerous situations. Checked his equipment, feeling the weight of a mission that would likely take the rest of his life to complete. I've got a partner who's proven she can handle dangerous situations, and even without her enhancements, I suspect she's still the best tactical mind I've ever worked with. Stirred at the sound of his voice, opening eyes that were now brown instead of violet. When she looked at him, there was still recognition there, still affection, even without their mental link. She said, her voice now a normal animal communication rather than human speech, but he understood her meaning anyway. Yeah, partner, I'm here. We've got work to do. 3 months later, and sat in the cockpit of a small stealth ship, approaching their 5th enhancement facility. Couldn't speak human language anymore, but their bond had reformed in a different way, deeper, based on trust and partnership rather than artificial neural linking. She had retained much of her tactical intelligence and all of her combat training. What she'd lost in enhanced abilities, she'd made up for with the fierce determination that had always been part of her true nature. The facility ahead of them housed over 100 enhanced beings who were converting captured humans and aliens into shadow hunters. It would be their most dangerous mission yet. Felt's readiness through their renewed partnership, not telepathic anymore, but based on perfect understanding built through shared experience. She had chosen to stay with him after losing her enhancements, and together they had become something the enhanced beings hadn't expected, an effective team that operated entirely within normal dimensional space. "Ready for this?" he asked her. Her response was a low growl that conveyed absolute determination. She had found her purpose at last, not as an enhanced weapon, but as a protector of those who couldn't protect themselves. As their ship approached the facility, realized that losing enhancements had given them something more valuable. Proof that bonds based on choice and trust were stronger than artificial neural connections. The enhanced beings sought perfection through forced evolution, but they had missed the most important element of truly effective partnership. "Let's go save the galaxy," said, feeling's fierce agreement. Together, they prepared to face whatever enhanced nightmares waited ahead, knowing that their greatest strength wasn't technology or artificial enhancements. It was the unbreakable bond between two warriors who had chosen to stand together against impossible odds. The Shadow Hunters had created the perfect soldiers through forced enhancement and dimensional manipulation. But they had forgotten something crucial about humans and their allies. They were at their most dangerous when they had something worth protecting and someone worth fighting beside. And would make sure they remembered that lesson, one facility at a time, until every enhanced being in the galaxy was given the same choice had made return to what they truly were, or face the consequences of trying to force evolution on those who chose a different path. The war for the soul of galactic civilization had begun, and it would be fought not by enhanced superbeings, but by ordinary soldiers who had discovered that the strongest bonds couldn't be artificially created. They had to be chosen, maintained, and honored through action. In the end, that would make all the difference.